Okay, so if you're not familiar with AARP, it's the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. With nearly 38 million members and offices in every state, plus Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocates for what matters most, with the focus on health, security, financial resilience, and social connection. Today's program will touch on wellness and health, which is part of our age-friendly social change media. Who's in the audience today? Make sure that you put your name in the chat, your first name and the city that you're zooming from. Who's in the chat, Jacqueline?
Oh, we have a
You're on mute. Unmute yourself, please.
I had it got muted again. Okay.
No
We
problem.
have Marissa from Walnut Creek. We have Suzanne from Shadow Hills. We have Bob from Long Beach. Oh my goodness. We have Virginia from Lake Forest. We have Bonnie from Kansas City. We have a lot of people. Oh, we have Cindy from Arizona and Greg from Santa Ana and Deb from Texas, Edinburgh, Texas. We have a lot of from across the nation today, Joyce.
Oh, thank you so very much. I'm so excited, Jacqueline. Thank you for letting me know. And you can still continue to put everything in so we'll know who you are and make sure that we do a shout out. So let's take a moment and answer our trivia question. So put your answers in the chat. What percentage of tea is used in herbal tea? Again, what percentage of tea is used in herbal tea? Do you think it's 10%, 25%, or 50%? What do you think? Jacqueline, do you see some percentages coming in the chat?
Oh yeah, we have a wide range of answers. Julie thinks that it's 10%. Bobby thinks it's 10%. Diane thinks it's 50%. Claire thinks that it's 25%. Ellen thinks 25%. What is the answer, Joyce?
Okay, group, hold on. The answer is 0. None of these. And I know you were so excited about putting them in. It's nothing. That was a trick question. So tea is made from the Camellia sinensis plant. Some examples are black tea, green tea, and oolong tea, and etc. In contrast, herbal teas are all those drinks that are made from a variety of dried flowers, herbs, fruits, and spices. You have innumerable herbal infusion tea style flavors. Now, today, they trend all over the globe, be it China, Africa, Asia, or even America and Europe. Now, I'm a tea lover. I love tea. But Jacqueline loves coffee. Jacqueline, do you drink tea sometimes?
Oh, I love tea. I love orange spice tea and green tea.
Those are good, but my favorite tea is oolong tea. I just love me some oolong tea. But thank you very
Just
much,
like to say
everybody,
that.
for I know that is my favorite oolong tea. All right. So today I'm delighted to have us to do some poll questions. Okay, so we're delighted to have all of you join us today, and we hope you have your coffee, your tea, or beverage with you. We're excited to share our Herb Your Enthusiasm Day. You guys get it? Herb Your Enthusiasm, which is great. To get us warmed up today, we have 2 poll questions, and we ask you to quickly submit your answer. Poll number 1. Are you planning to grow your herbs indoors in a container or outdoors in a container, such as a bucket, or outdoors in the ground or in a raised bed? Wow, I see these answers are really coming in. Wow, indoors is really getting excited. Outdoors is really blooming. Woo. I see them coming in. Outdoors is kind of winning. I see a couple of boats. Okay, what do you think, group? Okay, outdoors one's almost hands down 78%, and indoor was a slow 22%, which is not a problem. Let's go to our poll number 2. What are your top 2 herbs you would most likely to grow at home? This is a multiple choice question. So is it basil, oregano, rosemary, mint, sage, parsley, or if there's something else that you would like to put in the chat, put it in there and we can also identify it. So I see them coming in. I see them coming in. Basil is really doing good. Oregano is doing good. Okay, you got a few more seconds to put them in. It's looking good. Wow, and the answer is wow, basil. Everybody likes basil. Oregano is coming in good. Rosemary is strong. I like rosemary and basil. Parsley, and the little small one is sage. But that's okay because everybody, all of these are absolutely wonderful. So right now, thank you so very much for all participating. Again. All right. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our speaker for this evening. Our speaker is Sarah June, who is a U.S. Master Gardener in Southern California. She grew up enjoying the abundance with her grandmother's garden, and she has been growing her own organic foods ever since. After learning about how composting can rebuild eroded topsoil, capture carbon from the atmosphere, and reverse some of those effects of global warming, she decided to enter the U.S. Master's Gardener Program to learn more and share her knowledge in her community. Now, she loves growing herbs, tomatoes, fruits, and California native plants. And per our tradition, to add a little bit of spice to this introduction, let me give you some fun facts about Sarah. Her favorite flower is the California golden poppy. Whoa. She has 1 rooster and 5 hens. Oh, those rooster and hens must be running around the backyard having a great time. Her favorite composting method is worm composting. Oh, worms. The little worms. Okay. The one herb she could not live without is basil. So let's give Sarah a warm welcome. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Joyce. That was such a wonderful introduction. All right, let me make myself. All right, there we go. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. This is so exciting. I'm very happy to see all your poll results. And it looks like I will be able to address some of the herbs that you want to grow and some of the ways that you want to grow them. So shall I pull up the presentation?
Go right ahead.
Started. All right. I am going to start sharing my screen right here. And there we are. And can everybody see my screen now? All good?
Yes, go right
Great.
ahead.
Okay, great. Here we are, Tea and Coffee Tuesdays. And I have, for me, a little cinnamon tea, because that's what I like to drink. So we're going to start with a question that probably for most of you doesn't need answering, but, just in case, why grow herbs? I think everybody here already has a reason, but, the most common reasons are, of course, to eat as food, sometimes to drink as a tea. Herbs can also be medicine. As I'm sure many of you know, herbs also are flowering plants that bring pollinators like bees and butterflies, which are super important for our ecosystem. Thrift. It is much, much cheaper to grow herbs at home than to buy fresh herbs at the store because of the cost of packaging. It is very hard to keep fresh herbs fresh once they have been cut from the plant. So the main reason that herbs at the store are so expensive is because they have to be packaged and refrigerated, and they have a very short shelf life. And then, of course, my favorite reason for growing herbs, joy. It's really fun. They're beautiful. And, there's nothing like the feeling of eating something that you grew. And herbs are one of the easiest ways to do that and the shortest ways. So I want to start by talking about what is an herb. So when we talk about herbs, sort of in general conversation, we use the general definition, which is basically any plant that is used for flavoring, food, medicine, or perfume. Any plant that smells good or tastes good or does something good for your body. Now, the botanical definition is a little bit more stringent. A botanical definition of an herb is a seed-bearing plant that does not have a woody stem and that dies down to the ground after flowering. So that means that one of our most popular herbs, rosemary, is technically not an herb by the botanical definition. But of course, we use rosemary as an herb for its flavor and smell. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you are reading about herbs. That for example, like and also in some places an herb can be a perennial, but in other places it'll just be an annual. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. And then last thing here about terminology, what is the difference between an herb and a spice? An herb, again, by the botanical definition, is just the leaves, flowers, or stems of a plant that are used for flavoring, whereas a spice can be a seed, a fruit, a root, a bark, or any other plant substance. So, for example, ginger is a very common spice, but it is not an herb because it is a root. It is the root of the ginger plant, not the leaf. So in this presentation, because I have such limited time, I decided to just focus on some of the most popular herbaceous herbs, like truly herbaceous. So we're going to be talking about the 8 most popular herbs to grow, or actually 10, sorry. But we're not going to be getting into spices too much. And I'm also not going to be covering herbs like lavender, just because that is a perennial that once you grow it, it's not going to die back every year. It has a woody stem. So those are our limitations for the time that we have. And also just a little background on the botanical definitions of things, which are often very different from how we talk about plants in regular conversation. So I want to talk a little bit about the California perspective. I'm in California. I'm in Southern California, Los Angeles. I see in the chat that many of you are also in California. What's up? Peace, etc. So in California, we have truly an incredible, like overwhelming number of native plants that are endemic to California that do not grow anywhere else in the world. One of the most famous is the sequoia, the redwood tree. But of course, that's not an herb. So my first piece of advice to anybody that is trying to grow herbs in California is to look at California native herbs, because we have an incredible variety. One of the best known native herbs in California is white sage, which you may have heard about. It is popular to burn bundles of white sage as a smoke cleansing. White sage is actually a sacred plant to a number of Native American nations in Los Angeles and Southern California in general. And it is currently under threat because the places where it grows wild and those nations would normally go and harvest it from there, it is actually being poached by people who are coming and just taking huge amounts of sage and then selling it. So one thing to keep in mind about white sage, if you burn it, is that it is under threat. And if you have the ability to grow it at home, it is a more responsible way to consume the plant, and also a way where you can use the plant not just for burning. I have a white sage plant and I really love to use its leaves in tea. You can take one little fresh leaf and put it in a cup of tea. You can even put it in a cup of cool water. It doesn't have to be hot water. But because its taste is so strong, it will perfume the entire cup. And it's a really wonderful plant. There are also a lot of native plants in California that can be used as substitutes for other herbs that you may be more familiar with. One of those is the California bay laurel, which is a tree, and it can be used in place of non-native bay leaves, but these trees have bay leaves, and yeah, they're strongly scented. They're wonderful. They're great for cooking with. They're great for using in potpourri. They're really great. All right. Another couple of examples of California native plants. This one on the left here is yarrow. This is a plant that is extremely good for pollinators. Bees and butterflies love this plant. It's really common in Southern California. Another one here is California sagebrush. This might be my favorite California native plant. It smells incredible. It is wonderful. I love to burn it. I love to smell it. I love to make little pillows, little sleep pillows. You can stuff a little pillow with dried herbs and then tuck it under your pillow in bed, and it smells great. I really love this one, California sagebrush. So those two are Southern California natives. Here's a couple other. These are up here with the pink flowers. You've got Yerba Santa. This one is Yerba Mansa. And then down here in the bottom right, you've got Yerba Buena. Now, I know some of you are like, I'm not in Southern California. What do I care? Well, there are native herbs all over the United States. For those of you in California, I have an excellent resource that I truly cannot recommend enough. And that is the website calscape.org. That link should be dropped in the chat. And if not, we'll get it in there. But so I was talking about using native herbs as a substitute for some of the herbs you might be more familiar with. And one of those is Yerba Buena. Yerba Buena is an incredibly strong and sweet mint. It is not part of the mint family, but it smells and tastes like mint that has sugar in it. Yerba Buena it's highly aromatic. And you can see here, this is a screenshot here. This image that you see is a screenshot from calscape.org. And what it does is, if you look at the map over in these yellow areas, that's where this herb is found natively. And so if you live in any of those areas, not only will it be very helpful to your local ecosystem to grow Yerba Buena, but it will also be very, very easy because that is where the plant likes to live. I love Yerba Buena. It smells incredible, and it has a huge range. Now, finding native herbs with Calscape is as easy as putting in your address, and it will give you a list of literally thousands of plants that are native to your exact coordinates. Can you tell I love this website? I think it's really cool. So one thing that you can do with Calscape is you can find out which varieties of plants are actually native to you. So for example, one herb that you may not think of as an herb, but is tobacco. So there is this kind of tobacco, this Indian tobacco, which you can see is native to mostly Southern California, mostly the west side of California. But if you want to grow tobacco and you live in Northeast California, well, you've got your own native tobacco, coyote tobacco. And that'll be easier for you to grow. It'll be happier, and it'll bring those incredibly crucial native bees and native butterflies that make our world go around. So there's just a truly, like, it's a staggering number of plants and especially herbs that are native to California. So if you are here, I highly recommend you start with that. If you're not in California, I really recommend you look up what kinds of herbs are native to your state. It is the easiest to grow. That is the big sell. It is the absolute easiest to grow. And of course, one of the best for the environment at large. All right. So now I'm going to do a little quick overview of the 10 most common culinary herbs that you guys are probably going to be familiar with. Most of these come from Indo-Europe. So basically from Europe all the way down to India. We're going to start with one of the most popular herbs, which is mint. Mint is an entire family of herbs within the genus Mentha. Mint, it has, most of you are probably familiar with peppermint tea as a way to ease a stomach ache. It's really good for doing that. If you eat it regularly, it has a nice antiviral effect, and it is one of the easiest herbs to grow. One thing that you'll hear a lot when reading about mint is to keep it in a container because it spreads like crazy. It's got a really, really enthusiastic root system, and it can choke out other plants if you plant it in a bed with other plants. So people will often recommend that you either grow it alone in a container, or if you're growing it in a bed or a large container with other plants, that you plant you put it in a small container and you plant that container in the ground, and that way its roots are contained. There are many cultivars of mint. You can get lots of cool flavors. And then the mint family, of course, also includes relatives like pennyroyal, lemon balm, and catnip, which are other very useful herbs for us and our animal friends. I will say, if you have a cat and you grow catnip, you got to protect it from the cat, because they will just tear it out of the ground. They love it. They'll just eat the whole thing while it's in the ground. So you got to keep it out of their reach and, just give them a little bit. Moving on, basil. Of course, I'm a basil head, as it seems many of you guys are. Truly the one herb I could not live without. Basil is a really calming herb, and it's very good for your digestion. And this herb is actually incredibly native to all 6 inhabited continents. There is a native basil everywhere in the world, which I think maybe explains why it's so popular. Some of you may not know there are many subtypes of basil, and they all taste pretty different. The one that we're looking at here with the large leaves that are sort of curled down on the end, this is Genovese basil, or commonly called like Italian basil. And this is the one that you'll find used in making pesto. This is the best one for making pesto for sure. But there are a lot of other basils. I know somebody in the chat was mentioning they wanted to grow Tulsi basil. And so that's another subtype. That's an Indian subtype. There's lemon basil, Thai basil, which is a little spicier. Persian basil also has a little bit of a lemon, a little bit of a licorice, aniseed kind of taste. And so if you made a pesto from those kinds of basils, it would taste really different, but not necessarily bad. Oregano is another very popular one. Oregano is very, very powerful. Oregano oil is extremely powerful. It is antibacterial, antiseptic, and antifungal. Oregano oil is actually so strong that it is not safe to apply externally. You have to mix it. You have to dilute it with something. I know, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced oregano, but that's what they call oregano oil. And it is strong. It is really strong. But do not put it in between your toes, because it will burn your skin. So oregano is very nutritious. It has very high levels of vitamin K, vitamin E, manganese, iron, and calcium. And it has tryptophan, which some of you might know as what's in turkey that makes you sleepy. And so that's why it's kind of nice for your stomach. It's a little bit of like a muscle relaxer. And it can soothe the headache. It's a really nice, like, clarifying herb. Tarragon. This one is much less popular here in America, but much more popular, I think, in Europe and Asia. Tarragon is anti-inflammatory. It can help improve your heart health, lower cholesterol. It stimulates your appetite. It helps your stomach produce bile, which helps you digest. And so it's often used in dishes where there's like heavy fats or oils. If you have some tarragon in there, it'll help your body break down those fats and oils and digest them better. And there's only a couple of different cultivars of tarragon. You've got Russian and French tarragon. I really prefer the French. It's a lot softer. But if you're cooking with it, Russian is also fine. Dill, this is another one that's not quite as popular here, but is one of my favorites. It smells incredible. It helps your digestion. I'm sure you guys are seeing a theme here with all of these herbs. Almost all of them really help your digestion. And that's one of the biggest medicinal benefits of regular herb consumption. Is just in general, it is really great for your stomach, your intestines, and overall health. Dill, like mint, is another one of those herbs that you can eat and it makes your breath taste a lot better. Dill also, with regular consumption, can lower your cholesterol and your blood sugar. And it is, you probably know it best as a flavoring for pickles. And we love it. It's really, really fun to make pickles at home, as I'm sure many of you have. And it's very satisfying to be able to put in some homegrown dill with those pickles. Cilantro. I know a lot of you mentioned this in the chat. This is also, this is a divisive herb. Controversy, drama. Some people love it. Some people hate it. If cilantro tastes like soap to you, feel free to ignore everything I'm about to say. But if you love cilantro like me, you will be very happy to find out that it is one of the easiest herbs to grow. It stimulates digestion again. It improves your nutrient absorption. It has vitamin A, vitamin K. It lowers cholesterol. It is known in some parts of Europe as like an anti-diabetic herb. Not to say that it will cure diabetes, but it is very helpful for moderating and lowering blood sugar so that your blood sugar does not spike. And it's also a really strong antioxidant. If you take it in medicinal doses, like a pill of compressed cilantro or whatever, it can actually remove heavy metals and toxins from the body. So if you are eating it regularly, it is doing a lot of very good cleansing work for you. Parsley is another one that is very nutritious. Parsley actually has a very high amount of vitamin C, which we don't really think of it. We think of, a lot of people think of parsley more as a garnish. But if you, parsley has it's one of those herbs that creates a really large amount of plant matter. And so can be used in cooking in ways that I think in America, people don't really consider. Parsley's got a ton of calcium, iron, potassium, and magnesium as well. And of course, it also helps the digestion, which is why it has traditionally been used as a garnish for after you eat this little parsley to help you digest. The picture here shows flat leaf Italian parsley. There's also curly leaf type of parsley, but they have basically the same properties. You can cook with them the same way. And okay, cool. Sage is another one of those very, very popular herbs. This one that we're looking at here is common sage, Salvia officinalis. Again, in California, we have about 1 million types of native sage. So if you're in California, I have tried to grow common sage, and it is way harder than growing a native sage out here. And they do taste different, but I think it's really worth it. But if you are in a cooler area, especially, common sage will do extremely well for you in the summertime. Sage is, it's astringent, so it helps if you have night sweats or anything. It is an excellent treatment for a sore throat, or if you have canker sores on tongue or gums or anything, swishing around with a strong sage tea will really help that. And it's also a strong antioxidant. It's such a wonderful herb to get at the end of the summer when we're moving into fall, because it really helps you keep your immune system boosted throughout the cold and flu season. Rosemary, it looks like, was probably the second most popular in the poll. Very glad to hear that. A huge fan of rosemary. Pictured here is the upright type of rosemary. It grows up like a big bush towards the sun. And there's another type of rosemary that is called prostrate rosemary, and that's the creeping kind. If you've ever seen a wall with rosemary spilling over it, that's prostrate rosemary. So prostrate rosemary can make an excellent ground cover. Something that we were talking about before the presentation started is some of these new water restrictions that we're going to be dealing with in California. And one potential replacement for turf grass, which takes a lot of water, is a low water ground cover like creeping thyme or creeping rosemary. So rosemary, I actually have a little bottle of rosemary essential oil right now to sniff on, because it is really great for mental focus. It really helps you stay focused. And for me personally, I find it a nice, it's a real wake up. Once again, rosemary is an excellent digestive aid, stimulates bile, helps you digest those fats and oils. Some of you may also know rosemary is sometimes used as a hair tonic. It improves circulation, it strengthens blood vessel walls, and for that reason, when it's rubbed onto the scalp, it can help promote hair growth, or wherever you're trying to promote hair growth. Thyme, that was another one that I saw people were mentioning in the chat. One of my favorites, a very fussy little herb, but really delicious. Thyme is also like oregano. I would say probably almost as strong of an antibacterial and antifungal as oregano. So you can use it to treat athlete's foot. I would use the plant itself and not the oil, which is a distillation of its essential oils, very strong. So if you're using an oil, you have to dilute it. If you're using the plant, it's safe to use externally. Thyme also helps digestion. Thyme tea can help treat coughs. I don't know if there's any Armenians in the chat, but thyme soda is a popular Armenian drink. An acquired taste, I will say, but but very good for you. There are some different flavored cultivars of thyme. You've got lemon thyme, woolly thyme, and lime thyme. And those have a little bit more of like a citrus taste. All right, so that's the 10 most popular herbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So when thinking about what herbs you want to grow, one nice way to think about it, or maybe an easier way to think about it, is to think about what kind of food you like to cook, because the best part of using herbs to me is being able to just go out, pluck a nice fresh herb, and throw it in your dish without having to worry about storing those herbs or anything like that. So if you have a certain cuisine that you tend to enjoy, you can use that as a way to direct you to what kind of herbs you could try to grow. As you can see, like a lot of those Indo-European herbs that we're really familiar with are popular in European cooking, like Italian food, French food, and Russian food. If you're looking at Asian food, like Japanese or Thai food, you've got a couple of other local herbs that are used in that kind of cooking. And those are, of course, available for you to try, and could be a fun experiment. But yeah, if you like Mexican food, if you make tacos a lot, then cilantro is going to be very immediately useful to you. Bay leaf and oregano, those are going to be things that you can just pluck and toss in your dish, and it's going to give it a nice boost. You'll see in the middle, I have put Iranian food. I'm Iranian, and Iranian food is one of the most herb heavy cuisines in the world. We love herbs. We can't get enough. So there are tons of herbs used in Iranian cooking in very large quantities, not as a garnish and not as a flavoring, but actually as a green, the way that you would use like spinach. So we've got mint, Persian basil, tarragon, dill, parsley, and cilantro. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of very easy recipes later where you can use these kind of herbs. By the way, I'm going through some of these slides a little fast just because we have a lot to cover, but you can screenshot anything, or this is also going to be recorded. And so if you want to watch it back later, pause and screenshot, you can get all the information. Don't worry about taking it all in at once. So when should you grow herbs? It really depends on where you are. I have included, I believe Atisha does have the link for the USDA plant hardiness map. The USDA has created a nice little map for us showing the dividing the country into these numbered growing zones.
Want to sit out here or it's warmer? Okay.
I think we got some friends who have forgotten to mute themselves, but that's okay. So herbs grow in the spring and summer in the warm seasons, and they flower and die when it gets too hot or too cold. So if you're in California, we're over in this 9 and 10 zone. Most often, if you grow herbs in the spring and the summer, they will flower and die in midsummer when it gets very hot. But if you live up in zone 4 or 5, and you have a much shorter summer, a shorter herb growing season, your herbs are probably going to flower and die in the fall because it gets too cold for them. So that's really the big difference between growing herbs in these different parts of the country, is when your herbs are going to want to go to flower and seed. As we talked about, botanically herbs die every year, but many herbs, it is possible to keep them alive over the winter. So in California, for example, I grew a Tulsi basil plant last year that survived through the winter and is now growing new leaves. The important thing to remember with overwintering is that just because the plant can stay alive during that season doesn't mean that it will be growing and producing during that season. The winter and fall seasons is a dormant season for these plants. And so they need to get their rest. They need to get their sleep. So if you live in a place where it does not freeze, you have a very good chance of keeping your herbs alive for the next year, making some of those annuals actually perennials. But you got to remember to cut them down. You got to prune them heavily at the end of the year and just let those roots stay in the ground. And in the spring, they'll come back. It doesn't mean that you're going to get that fresh basil in the middle of winter with growing outside. Now, if you're growing inside, things are very different, but I'm not going to focus too much on that because that's a very controllable environment. And it seems like the majority of you are going to be growing outside. Excuse me. where should you buy herbs? This is a great question. So in my mind, you cannot beat planting seeds. I think planting seeds is great because you get to see the plant at all of its stages of growth. And most importantly, you get to pick the strongest ones. When you buy seedlings from a nursery, I was asked to address how to pick a good plant at the store. I'm going to tell you guys how to pick a good plant at the store. It's fine. You don't have to. By the time they've made it to the store, all of those seedlings are pretty much the same. All of the ones that are weaker have been taken out, and all of the ones that are stronger are just, those are the ones that have made it to the store. So when you're at the store, don't worry too much about, is this one better? Is this one better? Obviously, you want to look for healthy green growth. You want to look for that bright green of new growth. If you're shopping in the spring and the summer, that shows you that this plant is on a good growth track. But overall, by the time they've made it to the store, they're all pretty much the same. And it's just about what you do with them when you take them home. I do not really recommend buying seedlings from a big box store. I know that for many people, this might be the only option. And so if it is your only option, go ahead. But if you have the option to buy from a local nursery, I highly recommend it. I find those plants to, in general, be stronger and just have a better growth rate and better performance. I think it just has to do with scale, really. I think at a certain scale, it is very difficult to keep a large number of plants both alive and healthy without using a bunch of synthetic inputs. Another way to get herbs, if you have any friends or neighbors who grow herbs, is to ask them to help you propagate cuttings from their herbs. You can do this. It's very easy to do with mint. If you cut mint and you put it in a little glass, it'll grow roots. And if you get rooting, there's rooting powder is a hormone that contains plant growth hormones in it. And that's very useful for propagating something like rosemary, which has a very thick woody stem. So what you do is you'd cut a little piece of rosemary, take off all the leaves, except the ones at the very tip. You dip it in that rooting powder, and then you put it in some soil. And that is a really great way to propagate pretty much any woody plant or herbaceous plant. With an herbaceous plant that has a soft stem, you don't even need to use rooting powder. Like I said, like with mint, you can just put it in water. And some of those will rot and die. Some of those will never create roots. Some of them will just dry out, but that's okay. I think a part of my bio that Joyce did not include was I have personally killed hundreds of plants. And I want to say that because I think one of the biggest obstacles to growing plants is that people are worried about killing them, and it's okay. It's totally fine. They're plants. I have killed so many people. Come and see my garden. They're like, oh my God, you have such a green thumb. I have killed so many. You don't even know how many seeds that have germinated that just died, seedlings that died. It's just about scale. You just got to keep trying. If you killed 1 million plants, it's fine. Just try again. I think people get really in their head about that sometimes, and it stops them from trying to grow more plants. And to me, that's sad. It's totally okay to kill plants. They're very, very forgiving. That's the great thing. Okay. Growing herbs in containers, which I think a lot of you are doing. So there's a lot of options for containers. Right up here, we got your classic terracotta clay pot, no glaze on it. Over here on the bottom left, you got an earth box, which is a plastic box. You can see there's a little tube sticking out of it, and that's for you to water. And then there's like a reservoir at the bottom where the water goes. Quick question, can you guys see my mouse? Can you see my mouse moving around? Yes. Okay, great. Cool. So yeah, so down here at the bottom, there's like there's a little hole, a cover with holes in it through here. And this tube goes all the way down to the bottom. This is one of those self-watering containers. Over here, you've got an herb tower. This is from Martha Stewart. It looks like it's really just 3 clay containers stacked on top of each other, but this is one cool way to get more growing space out of if you have a limited space, like if you have a small porch or a patio or something, or a balcony, you can get, this is a nice way to like maximize your growing space. And then over here on the right, we have a classic wooden raised bed that has been elevated on these legs. This is really helpful if you experience pain while bending over, if tending to containers or beds that are on the ground is not comfortable for you. These elevated beds can be a great way to have a large growing space that doesn't require too much uncomfortable physicality. So when you're trying to choose what containers, the main thing to consider is water retention. Here in Los Angeles, we have, or rather, sorry, here in California, we have a lot of heat. We have a lot of heat and a lot of light. And so when I shop for containers, my main concern is how to retain as much moisture as possible. But if you're in a wetter place, especially one that gets like summer rains, you are not going to want as much water retention as I do. So one of the least water retentive materials is this unglazed clay. This is porous, and so water will evaporate throughout all the sides of the container, and that means that your herb that's in there is going to have great drainage. So that can be a good thing if you are in a cool place. If you're in zone 4, 5, 6, 7, oh sorry, no, just 4, 5. But if you're in zone 10 like me, this means your plant's going to cook. So I don't use unglazed clay pots for my plants anymore, but if it is glazed, then it is no longer porous and it will have more water retention. Wood is, again, a pretty good choice for those of us in warmer climates, but if you're in a cooler or wetter climate, you may find that your wooden container rots pretty quickly. For me out in LA, we get rain 2 months of the year. I've had raised beds, wooden raised beds that have lasted for like 5 years, and they're not showing, they're barely rotted. They're very, very usable. But if you live in a really wet or damp place, and by really wet, I mean you have regular rain. This is how I think now after living in LA. A wooden bed might rot quite a bit faster than you can keep up with. Metal might be a good choice for you, whereas here in LA, metal is a terrible choice. It gets super, super hot. It's going to cook your roots, and you're not going to even be able to touch it on those hot summer days.
Wow, Sarah, this is so much information. Oh, we're almost at the end part of your presentation, but
Oh no. Okay. All right.
I know.
How much time do I have left?
None.
None? Okay. All right.
But we still have a little bit for some questions.
We have the Q&A. Okay, great.
It's just a little bit. Okay.
Sure. Well, why don't I just
Recording in progress. So first of all,
so do you want to go ahead and walk me through the Q&A, and maybe if
can we do
stuff
that one,
comes
and maybe and then maybe you can answer some
Totally.
questions that popped up. Jacqueline,
yeah.
first of all,
let's
Sarah, this is so good, and I'm sorry I had to disrupt
okay.
you, but I was into it, and I'm saying, oh my God, we need to have some questions and answer
I
time. So
know.
Jacqueline, give us a few questions that possibly Sarah can answer, okay?
Oh, absolutely. A couple quick ones. How about, can you give us some quick tips on pest control?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I actually have this in I'll just skip over to this part of the presentation. Wait a second.
Oh, that's so much information. You have to come back. There's no way you can leave us and not come back ever.
And I'll page through it, and you guys can pause too. So pest control, great question. So one great thing about herbs is that many of them actually repel pests in the garden, and that's why it is so great to plant herbs among other plants. In this section, I had a little bit of talking about companion planting. There are some vegetables that the herbs will actually serve as an insect repellent for those plants. So when it comes to growing herbs themselves, if you have a pest issue, it is likely due to watering, probably overwatering. As you can see on this slide, I have like a few examples of herbs that will help repel ants, whiteflies, cabbage worms, And then here I had a couple of companion planting container ideas. Tomato and basil grow really well together, and that's something that will keep pests away from your tomato and your pepper as well as your herbs. And then as far as if you're growing herbs solo and you are getting pests on those herbs, my number one recommendation is physical removal. You can get stuff like sticky tapes, Vaseline type stuff, or physically removing the pests if they are large enough for you to be able to easily see and remove. I find that is generally the most effective and the gentlest on the plant.
Great. Can we just hear from Anna Rose? Her hand has been up for a long time. Anna?
Thank you. I have a question about the raised beds.
Mhm.
How deep is the soil in the wooden container would be suitable for herbs?
Herbs do not need a very large depth. I would say you can grow an herb in a pot, in a 4-inch pot. It won't get very large, but it will live. I would say 6 or 7 inches is really all that most herbs need. Any herbs that have that are perennials, like a rosemary, can grow a really deep taproot. So that's one plant that could benefit from being in a larger container or going in the ground. But in general, most of the herbs that we talked about, 6 inches to a foot is all you really need.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, thank you. So now, Sarah, you were so good and you have so much additional information. So we definitely have to have you to come back.
Sure.
So, but before we close right now, we like to take a quick pulse with the poll. So let's pull up our poll for just a few moments, okay?
Question, would the recording have all your slides from the presentation?
Yeah, I would like to. Is that something that's possible for us to do, Joyce?
You know what, we can get back to you on that one because I want to make sure that we at least answer some of the questions and then we will send out the information a little bit later, okay?
Cool.
Okay, thank you. So take a few minutes now, answer our quick poll. So which one is it? Would you think it would be helping to attempt grow herbs the first time, companion planting, growing native herbs, watering techniques? Oh, that's a good one. Herb storage and herb receipts. Or if you see something else, put that in there also. Okay, so I see the answers are really coming in. You guys are so good. I'm so excited. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, look at here. Growing native herbs, which is good. Sarah mentioned that about native herbs, and companion planting is really good too. So then the watering techniques. I see you got some first-time growers, helping willing to do first-time growers, which is really good. And of course, herbal recipes. So thank you so very much for attending and participating. This was a really great audience and great presentation. Thank you so very much today. So now we would love to hear your feedback. So in just a few moments, we will put up our feedback slide. And so please fill out our survey and the link will be placed in the chat so that you can show us how excited you were to give feedback to Sarah and to the rest of us, which is absolutely wonderful. And our slide is there, and please click on the link to continue. Now, our next Tea and Coffee Tuesday is coming up soon. All right, so Hearing as We Age, which will be Tuesday, June the 14th at 9 a.m. Please register at the chat below. There's a link at the below, and there's a link that you can put on, and that's Marcia Reggio, who's a PhD. She's a professor of speech, language, and hearing science. Our next one is Journey to Juneteenth. Well, this is going to be a great conversation, which will be held on June the 17th at 12 noon. Again, our link for the register now, and there's a link in the chat at the very bottom of the page. And Dr. Jackson will also lead a conversation with the community organization. So please feel free to do that one June the 17th at 12. And of course, our piggyback essentials with Martin Part 2 Moneymakers. And that'll be Thursday, June the 30th at 9 a.m. And again, register now, and the link will be in the chat. And Martin Booker, if you're a spender, a saver, or a maker or a grower, Martin is a guy for you. He'll let you know all of the good stuff and the good tips we'll have. We'll be discussing everyday's habits and tips to make you financially resilient and learn how to make wise money saving choices. If you have any questions or for any suggestions for future Tea and Coffee Tuesday sessions, please contact Atisha Jones. And her information is at the bottom. Please click on the link and give her all of the information. And she is waving her hands, and that is Atisha.
We will definitely bring Sarah June back.
Oh, we have to. There's just no way we can get out of this one.
She's coming back.
There's
Sarah,
too
you've
much.
been asked, you've been requested.
Sure.
There's no saying no.
doubt.
Perfect. We'll do part 2 next time then.
No, we got to do part 2 and then finish part 1.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Master Gardener Sarah June.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me.
This is so much. Thank our moderator, Jacqueline Cole, our volunteer production crew, Olivia Payne Tenson, our tech specialist, Vince King and Connie Moore, our AARP staff, and especially you. And thank you again, and make sure you come and see part 2. Again, have a great day, and think herbs, and make sure you try at least one herb for this evening. Have a great day.